Welcome to the DIY tin earring video. And welcome to my studio. It's a crowded mess of stuff, but that's kind of how I like stuff. I like to have lots of things in my visual field. So I will not do that for this video, but I will show you how to make earrings from this kit you've just purchased. And if you haven't purchased the kit, that's cool too. You can use this video with any of the tin that you might find out in the world. I recommend thrift stores. It's a great place to find them. So I will flip over to the actual DIY part. I'll show you what tools you might need. I've tried to include everything I can in the kit. There's a few things that you'll probably have in the house that'll make things easier for you, but let's get started. All right, let's get started. So if you have your little kit, you can see that it's got a nail, which you may be wondering about, the tin circles, the ear wires, and this piece of fine steel wool. So the ear wires are in this little paper package. There are 3 styles in the, and also this has your jump rings too. So there are 3 styles of ear wire. You have this long style, this short kidney wire. These are both kidney wires, and then you have kind of a medium standard French hook wire. So those are going to be your choices for finishing your earrings. So in this paper packet is the best part. It's going to be all your little tin circles. And I have these little trays that I like to use to just keep things in. You obviously don't have to have that. You can use just a piece of paper or something to kind of put your circles in, but you can see these are all sort of random circles. So I'm just kind of looking through, seeing what's in here, and I'm going to pick out a few and we'll get started. Okay, so the first part is, like I said, I've just gone through and picked out a few that were appealing to me. I went with some greens with, you know, they've got a little bit of pinky red as well in here, and a couple of these little flowery blues. So from my perspective, the first thing to do is to really kind of figure out just how you want these earrings to look. So do I want 3? Do I want just 2? I'm just kind of playing around, figuring out what I like. I like those 2 together, and I kind of like the 3 drop. Now again, these are all random circles, so these earrings aren't going to match, but I'm not a matcher kind of person anyway, so I think that's kind of fun. I've chosen these circles really randomly, so there may be a few things in here that match, but more likely they won't. So it'll be good practice for you to play around and not get too caught up with everything is perfect and matchy. That's part of the creative process, I think. All right, so we have these 3. I'm going to use these 3 or 6 circles. The first part of any making with these shapes for me is finishing the edges. So that's why we have this steel wool here. Normally, for me, I file all my edges and then steel wool them, but that's because I'm doing it professionally. But it doesn't, the tin doesn't really require you to file them and steel wool finish them. So I don't. And you know, if you have a file and know how to file, great, go for it. But if you don't, that's cool, you don't have to. So I like to fold this little piece of steel wool over so that it's kind of more rigid and thicker, and then all I'm doing is taking the edges of these circles and then just rubbing it in the steel wool. And what this does is it, like I said, it softens the edges so that they feel not as, you'll know when you get the kit, you'll feel this sort of rough edge that happens when they get cut. These are all cut with a disc cutter, a circle cutter. And sometimes it takes a couple times to go around the edge, and you'll see little bits of steel wool kind of shredding here. So, you know, do it on a surface that you can just wipe off. So that those two are finished. All right, cool. Those are all finished and they're ready for the next step. I notice as I'm looking at them, I like this color, but I think it could be a little bit more of an interesting piece. So one of the other things you can do with this nail that I've included in your kit is you can use a straight edge. I'm just going to use a template that I have just handy, but anything you have around the house that's got a straight edge, a ruler obviously, or any, you know, anything that's kind of thin and has a nice edge that you can use as a guide. You can take your nail and actually make sure you're holding the tin piece tight to your surface. You can take your nail and actually just drag it across the surface of the tin, and you will get a cool line. And so one of the things I like to do with the tin, and I've made this kind of off center, so we'll see how it works, is to sometimes just give it more interest by etching line work into it. I like to do these starburst patterns because the tin is essentially painted. It's what you're seeing is the painted finish, and a nail or another kind of needle can scratch that paint off that reveals the silvery steel underneath. And so I really like doing that in various ways. And you can see the other thing I like is that you can see this light play is different on the etched area, and so when you put that back, it's got a little more interest. All right, we're getting really close to being finished. The other thing that you probably have around the house is a Sharpie. A pencil will work too. Anything that you can mark me, because all we're going to do is I'm just going to indicate on my pieces where I need holes for jump rings, because I'm going to attach these pieces with the jump rings that were provided. Now again, some of these that have images, you want to make sure you've got your orientation correct. Do you want the flowers that way? Do you want them this way? I kind of want them like this. And so this this allows you to make sure you get your holes in the right place. So I need a hole for the ear wire, I need 2 holes to attach here, and 2 holes to attach these here. And of course I don't need a hole in the bottom because I'm not attaching anything. Same thing over here, where I'm going to put my holes. All right, we're good. All right, cool. So I have this little hole punch. It's made for jewelers. And it's very unlikely that you'll have one, but if you are making anything, jewelry, or even other things, I use it for paper, I use it for other materials. They're really useful. They're not super expensive. They're like $15. And they're just super easy. So I'm just going to show you real quick. I've got my hole marked, and I want these fairly close to the edge, these holes, because we're going to be using these small jump rings. So you don't want to be in deep. You want to be on, you know, on the edge, obviously without going over the edge. So these, you just punch a little hole and, you know, you're done. Your hole is made. So sometimes they leave a little tab of tin, so you need a pair of pliers. If you have a needle nose, pliers are really useful if you have those. But it's fairly likely you don't have these pliers, so this is the reason I included the nail. So if you have a little piece of scrap wood and a hammer, I have this little hammer, but any hammer that you have in the house will work. And your nail, and your piece of tin that you want to make a hole in. So what you can do is literally kind of just hammer a hole in it. Now, I like to do it sort of gently. I start the hole on this side. I try to make sure that I get the hole through, which I didn't do that time. There we go. So I've got the hole through, but it's not quite big enough. You need it to be big enough, obviously. And so what I like to do is turn the tin over and go from the other side and punch back through, because that the tin bends in. The tin bends obviously a little bit as you're hammering down, and so if you turn it over, you can kind of push that bend back down again. And so there you go, you've got a pretty decent hole. It has a little bit of an edge, but if it feels like it's too catchy, you can rub it on your steel wool, and that can soften it a little bit. Or again, if you have a piece of sandpaper, you can just sand down that little edge. All right, I've gone through and I've punched all the rest of the holes, and now it's time to start connecting them. These jump rings included in your kit are pretty small because, frankly, I think that things look better when they're smaller, but they can be a little trickier to manage. So I'll try to get good photos here. If you have good little fingers, you can actually, you can see these, they're small. These are like 4mm jump rings, I think. And jump rings, if you haven't used them before, are just a ring of metal, of wire, and there's the opening in the middle. These are kind of oval jump rings, so there's an opening in the middle of the oval on one side. And some people want to pull them apart, but you don't want to pull them apart. You want to twist them open and closed. And I'm going to show you with tools just because it's easier for you to see. These are chain nose pliers, so they are kind of like a needle nose plier, but they don't have any teeth. Those are made for jewelers. A needle nose, if you have a pair of needle nose pliers, that will work great too. I like to use 2 pair of pliers to turn my jump rings. But so you're twisting them open and closed, not pulling them apart. So I've twisted it open. I'm gonna slide it through the holes I've made. And then you need to slide the other also through the hole. And so the rule is you want either your backs together, because you're going to slide both of them at the same time. You want the backs together so that when it opens up, the fronts will be front facing. And then I'm twisting this jump ring closed again. The tricky part about tin is it's pretty thin, so you don't want any gap. You don't want any air gap in the jump ring. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's pretty tight. It's closed tight. And so that first pair is connected. And then we just do the same thing with the next and the next and the next. All right, we've got those connected. I'm going to use one of these kidney wires, these little kidney wires, to finish off the earrings at the top. So these wires are locking wires, so you just push them open. You thread them from the back. You want to push them through the back so that they catch on that little notch. And then some people just leave that notch open, but I don't really like to do that. If you don't have pliers, you can just squeeze it together with your fingers. It's a little rigid, so, but it's totally doable. And so that closes up the loop so that these stay, so that things stay on, which is really what you want. And so that's it. If you have a pair of needle nose pliers, sometimes I like to go in and what I call kind of I kind of push the wires past each other and then straighten them back out because I think that gets them the closest closed, but it's not imperative. And so that lock allows you to lock these in your ears so they don't fall out. I like to lock it, and then again, if you have a piece of pliers, if you have some pliers, I kind of like to go in and straighten up this curve a little bit and make the wire just a little bit longer and give it a little less tail in the end here. But again, that's not imperative either. But that's it. You've got a finished earring, and then we can finish. Actually, I'll finish the other earring in the French hook style to show you the difference. It's not a big difference, but again, this little loop is kind of like a little jump ring. It needs to be just twisted open, and again, you can do it with your fingers. It's a little trickier if you don't have pliers. Yeah, if you don't have pliers, sometimes even strangely, in a pinch, I've used scissors to kind of like use the metal to push it open. It's not the easiest, but you can make it work. But same thing, you're just like a jump ring, you're just threading this wire on the top and closing the loop closed again. Again, you want to make sure it's snug because that tin can be thin, and then you have it finished that way. So slightly different looks. This wire doesn't have a lock, so sometimes people find that this French hook is more likely to be lost. They make those little plastic stoppers. I'll actually include a few in the kit and for you in case you want to use them. And then these guys lock on their own, and they should stay on your ears really well. All right, so that covered the basics of how to use the circles as they are in the kit. But I also want to just add another little bonus bit of information. If you have a pair of scissors in the house, just any decent Fiskars or anything, they will cut tin. And so if you don't want to use just straight circles, you can come in and cut the tin. In this case, I'm going to cut these two circles into semicircles, into half circles. And once you cut the tin, you'll want to, again, finish that edge. You'll want to go back in and make sure that it's not too sharp. So I had finished the outer edges, but now I'll finish these cut edges. And the same thing with this littler piece. I like to cut in the back of my scissors. That's where you have the most torque, essentially. And it cuts a lot like paper. It's just a little bit more rigid, or a lot more rigid. It's metal, but it is not hard to cut tin. And I've not found that it actually hurts scissors either. So, if you have a pair of scissors and you don't want to mess them up, I don't think this is going to mess them up. At least that's not been my experience. I cut paper with these guys all the time after I've cut a bunch of tin. So it seems to be not an issue with this kind of modern technology. When I was a kid, my mom was always like, don't use my sewing scissors to cut paper. I don't know what that was all about, but I don't think that's the case anymore. So anyway, so now you've got these two half circles. So you could make earrings like that as well. Same process. You just put your holes in and connect them with jump rings, and you're on your way. And you don't have to just stick to half circles. You could start making little pie shapes, or anything that was circly. Like I said, you could cut into your circles and create sometimes it's hard. You don't want to cut too far because you don't want to cut into your piece of tin. So what I try to do is cut a little less and then just twist out any tabs. But same thing, you could do a little pie shape and connect your pieces together like that. Or let's get them in the actual screen and show you, you could connect them like that. Or any number of ways. There's all sorts of things you could do. So I really hope that you enjoy the kit, that if you have questions, you for sure let me know. That's it. It doesn't really take a whole lot. You don't really need special tools. I hope that you got everything you need from the video. If you haven't, please get in touch with me either through my website at adaptivereuser.com or on Instagram at Christine Terrell. I would love to answer any questions that I could and would love to know and see what you've made. So for sure, tag me there on Instagram and get in touch if you have any other questions. Thanks.